Welcome to the state of Ohio. I'm Karen Kassler. Ohioans paid $16.7 billion in property taxes last year, and a report released this last week says those high property taxes are not leading to lots of spending by schools, but instead are making up for low state spending on K-12 education. A report from school funding expert Howard Fleeter and former state budget director Greg Browning concluded Ohio has dropped to 45th in the nation in the state share of K-12 revenue from 35th a few years ago. But the state has the 8th highest property tax rate in the nation. The authors write that those most hurt by those property tax bills are the least able to pay them. A task force convened by Governor Mike DeWine is expected to deliver its recommendations on property tax law changes in a few days. The panel is charged with coming up with ideas on combating those soaring property tax bills while still funding schools, police, and other services. But they'll have to deal with a lot of issues, including House Bill 920, which blocks rising home values from creating unvoted tax increases on homeowners. It reduces the tax rate on all voted property tax levies in proportion to increases in property value. There's an exception to that guarantees a school district's effective tax rate cannot fall below 2% of a home's assessed value or 20 mills, which is known as the 20 mill floor. I sat down with 3 school superintendents to talk about the pressures they're facing from property taxpayers, from lawmakers, and from the families of the kids that they serve. First up, George Woods, superintendent of the Federal Hocking Local School District in Athens County, a consolidated rural district that's huge in size but small in enrollment, just over 800 students, and around 70% of them are considered economically disadvantaged. The school board voted to cut a handful of teaching positions earlier this year.
You know, the state pressures us a lot because we have made the decision that even though we're small, we will keep open our small elementary schools. They're the center of life in Coolville and Amesville. They're small schools. They're where people go to school and get a great education. They're well maintained. We take great care of these buildings. They're safe. The community's in and out all the time. They're community events. But the state always pressures us to close those buildings and bring all the students to the high school, middle school, which when you're in a 180-mile square district, that means kindergartners are going to be riding buses for an hour and a half each way. So that's the big pressure.
Some state lawmakers have anchored on this idea that school districts are holding a lot of money in their operating budgets, a big percentage of their operating budgets, billions of dollars in collected property tax revenue from voter-approved levies that could be returned to taxpayers. In the last budget, there was a provision that would cap that at 40% of the operating budget. Governor DeWine vetoed that. That would have affected your district, I can imagine.
Yeah, I appreciate what the governor did. And here's what I'd say to the legislatures, and I'm sorry, but this is none of their damn business. We raised those taxes. We saved those taxes. We saved that money over years, and then we're able to do things like we installed a solar generating plant on top of the school, which virtually eliminates our electricity costs. But we did that because we'd been saving money for 10 years. I mean, that's bank robbery. That's larceny. That's our bank. Our community paid that money in, knowing where it was going, and knew that we would do things with that money that would make our schools better. We put new roofs on with that money. It's not like the state's going to come down here and put a new roof on a school. So those legislators, I mean, they're bank robbers. That's all they are.
The goal of doing that and that cap 40% with the rest being returned to taxpayers was to provide some property tax relief. And certainly there's some concerns about property taxes with this movement that would try to abolish property taxes, that volunteers are now gathering signatures to put that before voters. Is that something, because you are so dependent on property taxes for school funding, is that an effort that you're worried about?
Well, sure, but let's be clear. That effort is property tax should be reformed. I get it. The property tax system was put in place in this country in the 1700s when only white males could vote and only white males could own property. So it's what you paid to get to vote, right? Things have changed. Yes, we should do something different, but can we be just honest for a minute? This is not about property taxes. This is just about cutting funding to public services. We have a legislature that seems to dislike fire departments, police departments, schools, roads, cemeteries, parks, any place they can cut taxes. And taxes pay for all those things, right? I mean, the other side of it, Karen, is that this is also the legislature exceeding its bounds and continuing to try and cut local control. Property taxes are, we can't add to the state income tax. We can't just raise the income tax like they can. We can't raise a big sales tax. We don't have many businesses in our area. The one thing we can do is go to our voters and say, do you like what we're doing? Do you approve what's going on in the schools? Here's our situation. Would you be willing to pay a little bit more money? And they get to vote. I think what the legislature forgets is these weren't magically imposed on people. People voted these in. Should the system be changed and improved? Absolutely. Happy to be a part of that, but that's not what this is about.
Do you think that schools can get ahead of that message to taxpayers who are frustrated, who feel like they're being squeezed, that they can't afford their property taxes? And so, nobody wants to pay property taxes, right? How do you get ahead of that message?
Let me first say, I don't agree that nobody wants to pay them. I happily write my check. And I see the fire department down the street and the street lights come on at night and the children go to school. Of course, everybody would like to keep all their money, but taxes are what we pay for living in a community, in a civil society. Look around the world. You want to live somewhere where there are no schools, no fire department. No, that's where you don't pay taxes. I think the message to our community needs to be, and we need to be real transparent and real public. In fact, we've got a meeting scheduled in October where we will roll out our 3-year forecast, and we will spend hours with our community explaining, here's where this revenue comes from. Here's what we spend on this. We want to be really transparent. That's the important thing. So people go away thinking, yeah, that's good. I like having Friday night football. I like basketball games. Yeah, that's a good thing.
What message would you send to lawmakers about changes that you think could be made to help property taxpayers who are struggling, but also protect school districts? What would you like to see lawmakers do?
Pay their bill. They don't give us enough money. The only reason we do this is because we've all known the funding system is broken. They made a shot at fixing it. It worked for a little bit, and then they just threw that one out. Come up, and I know this is a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. They just need to come up with a fair funding system, and they need to fund schools not out of residual money, like what's left after we've done everything else. Schools need to be, and I'm not disrespecting my friends in the police force or the firefighters. Actually, there you go. Fund schools, law enforcement, firefighters, then do everything else. I do know people on limited incomes. I do know people that have, especially around here, they've inherited really large, beautiful farms. And here comes folks from other places who think they're really beautiful, and they start buying them, and the price starts going up. And so their appraisal goes up. Maybe a cap on appraisal increases. Maybe something like that, something that prevents an impact on a community that the community can't control. We can't control that there's a lot of money in Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, et cetera, and we live in a beautiful place and people want to come buy it. I can't control that. But when they do it, it runs up the value of everybody's property and everybody has to pay more. I don't have any different property now. I don't have a different job. I'm still retired. So maybe if they looked at, it's good to have this conversation because I never thought about it until you asked that question.